Hello, everyone. Ambassador Terry here, along with a group of wonderful people that have been on a journey with me, talking about audience and different parts of the audience and how to profile, inspire them, get them to participate, follow up. And we've had some great discussions. Now, this is the final show, and we have everyone here to put in their comments in follow up. Maria Papacosta and I did a great job on audience profiling, and we kind of walked through some basic ideas and concepts that we both incorporate when we're speaking. So, audience profiling, from my perspective, ladies and gentlemen, is I wrote a book, Profiling for Profit: What Crossed Arms Don't Tell You, where I help speakers, including my own habits. What do I do when I go to an event or of some sort? And how do I read the room? When I'm talking to people, do they understand my message? Because I speak internationally, like a lot of my guests here today. And it's a delight because, when you profile in the room, if everybody's looking down at their cell phones and laptops, etc., they're not really paying a whole lot of attention to you. What would you do about that? Well, I just go silent for about 5 seconds.
That works.
And everybody jumps up. What just happened?
Mhm.
Right? You grab them back. In fact, more than one of us here today have done that in the past. Maria, what do you do?
Well, I go silent as well, to be honest with you. Um, well, you're the profiling expert, so you know about this subject much more than I do. But what comes into my mind is that when we go on that stage, it's no longer about us, it's about the audience.
Mm.
And when we talk about profiling, what most people do, you know, they try to find out about the audience they're going to have the keynote for. They take the demographics, they take some various information, but usually they just touch the surface. They don't go into much detail, so they don't really know their audience. And similarly, when they are on stage, they pay more attention to themselves and how they sound and how they look like, rather than how the audience is reacting. So when we talk about profiling, it's always about them, never about us as speakers. It's not about how great our message is. It's not about how, I don't know, how great presenters we are or anything like that. It's always about them. And that's the major thing that we forget. And that's the major thing that we need to have in mind when we do the audience profiling. So it's before we actually go to the event, speaking with the organizers, going early to see what's going on in that room, to watch how they respond to the speakers before us. And then it's profiling while we're on stage, having this ability to talk, to present, and at the same time adapt to what they need, because what we say may not be interesting to them. So we need to pay attention to their body language, looking at their phones or not, and things like that. And I would go that profiling is also after your keynote, but that's way too advanced, so I won't go there.
Good one. Good one, like it was the first time. And now we're going to go on to the next episode of our series, Audience Inspiration. What are those things that you think about to get everybody excited about what you're saying and what your topic is? Certainly, spending some time with the audience before the event will certainly give you some ideas on how to point out to different people without pointing a finger. And I take that to heart. I love to talk to as many people in the audience as I can, so that depending on how long my keynote or presentation is, I can address a lot of people in the audience, and they feel appreciated and identified, and at the same time, not embarrassed because I didn't point them out. Mike Stevenson was in on this one with me, and Mr. Scotland, what's your points of interest in the in inspiration, my friend?
Well, I mean, just carrying on from the previous discussion, just for a moment, the audience profiling is really important because not just for your messaging, but also for the kind of mood that they might be in. So I wrote a story recently about arriving at this gig, and I was told 5 minutes before I went on that 40% of the audience had just received redundancy notices. Right? So that really threw me. I did it, and I managed to combine the two. But it's so important to know of anything that might be in the background. But I also take in Terry's point about circulating. I walk around and I talk to people and I listen to them before. And sometimes I create plants as well. So you might find someone, you come up to with an agreement that you're going to shout out the name, they're going to stand up and say something that you've worked out before. Inspiration is really everything, because when I stand on stage, I don't use a podium unless I am absolutely forced to. There's only one photograph of me with a podium, and it's because I like to occupy the stage. Because if I'm not passionate, they're not going to be passionate about anything. That's the first thing. The other one is, constantly keeping your eye on people so that you're never out of eye contact. In fact, putting them center stage. When people say to me, "You like being center stage, don't you?" I said, "No, I like my audience to be center stage." Right. And it's about changing the tempo. It's about telling stories that will inspire people, because you're not instructing them. The worst thing is to say, "This is what I want you to believe." The best thing to do is to tell a story which makes a point really obvious. Does that make sense? So,
you're good at
it. Well, yeah, but I think, I come from a Celtic background, so I probably am quite good at storytelling just innately. But it is so important to use storytelling and metaphors and to put in little bits of humor there, because the humor is a relaxant. When an audience laughs, they're more receptive to the next thing you say. I mean, I think that's a scientifically proven thing. Maria might look horrified at that, I don't know. But it is about keeping high energy on stage. You can't inspire someone with a dull voice that just goes along the bottom, with no tempo and no rises and falls, and it doesn't excite you. If you're not excited, they're not going to be excited. If they're not excited, they won't be inspired. So it's about emphasizing things, points you want to make in stories. It's about reaching crescendos in what you say. And it's about giving people information that they want to hear. Does that make sense? You might challenge them, but people are looking for answers. They're looking for inspiration. And you're there to provide it. And to provide it, you have to have those techniques, the stories, the metaphors, the bit of humor, the change in tempo in your voice, the change in pace. And you need pauses as well. Because when you say something, you pause, then you can come in with a really big point. And it's really about orchestrating yourself. As if I had a conductor standing in front of me. I do it myself. And I move my hands and make gestures as well. It all adds up to ways of inspiring. But you need killer points. You need something that's going to really lift them and make them see the world in a different way. That's inspiration.
I love it.
That is so spot on. And that falls right into Mr. Stage himself. John Chappelear has traveled internationally training from the stage. And, it's one thing to get him inspired. It's certainly another thing to get him participating. John, what's your thoughts?
Well, if you're doing what Mike's doing, you've only got an hour or so, and you don't have a lot of automatic interaction. So you've got to kind of do what he was suggesting. What I do if I have an audience, unless they're sitting in an auditorium type of setting, if they're sitting in rounds or chevrons set up for tables, I'll go and sit at the table before the talk. I'll pull up a chair and introduce myself and say, "Hello, how are you doing? What's the number one issue you'd like me to address today?" So that people feel as if they're being connected instantaneously before I even start talking. And if they have a question, I may think while I'm talking about bringing up that question. And Sally just said something about this just a minute ago. You want to say what that was again? And usually they go, no, 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 no. So then I'll just remind whatever the cause is in whatever the question was or the comment was or whatever the issue was. I've also gone in beforehand what Maria was talking about with this idea of checking with the facilitator or a lot of times I get booked by speaker bureaus. So a lot of times I'll talk to the speaker bureau about what's going on with the client because they know the client. They book all kinds of stuff for the same client. Well, I did one a couple of years back where the owner had just died. And, they weren't going to cancel the conventions and things. They were just going to go forward. But everybody sort of had this pallor laying all over everybody's sort of position. So I couldn't go on like, nobody was ready for that. Nobody wanted that. They wanted something that was from the heart and from that it was caring and nurturing rather than being engaging, but not slapstick or off the cuff or sarcastic or in any way anything other than genuine. So you just kind of have to, and if you've done it a while, and all of us have done it a while, you just kind of, okay, then I'll do it this way kind of thing. So, I introduce myself at the beginning if I can, as people come in or at the tables. I listen to the speaker bureau or the client themselves about something they want to make sure I either do address or do not address. And then the final thing is in workshops, it's really important to find out what's going on with the individuals, the challenges they have. And we don't have time for me to tell the story about the nurse who couldn't say no to people. That's one of the things I said to Maria, sort of popped up early. I had a nurse that couldn't say no to people. So we just practiced every time I pointed to her for 3 straight days. Every time I pointed to her, she was supposed to yell, "No!" And it was funny, by the end of the 3 days, the whole group was yelling it together. And, all of a sudden she realized the value and importance of being able to say, "No, I can't do that. Thank you, but I can't." And that's how you get somebody to me, when I started in sales, the simplest concept was sales is a transfer of enthusiasm. And that's what, to me, speaking is. I'm excited about this, and I want to transfer that enthusiasm to you. And the better I can do that, the more viscerally I can do that, the more engaged you'll become with what I have to say. Humor is great. But please don't try to be funny if you're not funny. There isn't anything worse than somebody saying, on Tuesday, maybe it was Wednesday. No, actually, it wasn't last week. It was, so please make sure that if you're going to be smart, if you're going to be funny, that you're funny. So, it really is sort of your basic gifts, but they've been, honed to the point where you can change up the way you deliver something. But the most important thing, I think, is the same thing that Mike was saying and the same thing Maria was saying, is that the key here is that they need to know you're engaged with what their needs are, because that's what I'm there to do, is to find a way to talk about what I'm talking about and connect it to their needs. Because this isn't about me. What I'm supposed to be doing, even though I'm standing in the spotlight, what I'm supposed to be doing is shining the spotlight on the audience and with my words and connecting with them. And so that's, as I always say, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Good story.
Absolutely. Mike has something.
Yeah, I'm just going to say that inspiration comes from the heart rather than the head.
Exactly.
You don't feel anything in your head. And the thing about engaging people is that you can ask rhetorical questions. You can engage them in a variety of different ways, but inspiration comes from the heart. So you've got to connect emotionally, and that is really the nub of it. You can present people with facts, and
God, no.
fine. We need facts as part of what we're doing, but people are more concerned with the how you're feeling and how they're feeling. And when I ask a promoter what they want, I say, what do you want them to feel? What do you want them to experience? How do you want them to feel afterwards? And what do you want to do that as a result of that feeling? So that's my focus.
Mm.
And you're talking about them all the time, not yourself, if that makes sense. You might use some of your own stories, and it's certainly your personality, but they are center stage. And that in itself is inspiring because so many speakers will just stand there and present a series of facts, and the audience feel ignored in a way. That's all I wanted to say. And
Absolutely.
the nurse who never said no, I wish I'd met her.
There you go. There
She
you
didn't say she was fixed after we finished with her. She was fixed.
go. She was fixed. Yes, I love that. What a segue. We've got them participating. We got an engagement. They know we're real. We know they're real, and we acknowledge them. And then we talk about response. And how do we get the audience to respond? Jenny Landgren. Hi, Jenny. Got your
Hi,
email.
Terry. Oh, the audience response will depend so much on their culture,
Mhm.
on their filters, on their intentions. So we really get to connect with ourselves first and our identity and our story, as Mike is so brilliant as presenting, right? If I go on stage thinking that this won't amount to much and who will listen and why is this even important, I am going to vibrate that to the people listening, and that will have an effect. If I go up on the stage knowing that I have the most important thing to share with you this week, my story will reach you in a way that other people won't. And I know that there's a person in this room that is desperate to hear what I get to say. Then people will be attracted to that. They will listen to the identity that I present. Let's not get bummed out by the reactions that we get sometimes.
As a behavioral scientist,
Mhm.
a lot about what you're doing up on stage has a connection that a lot of times we as other types of speakers don't have. We're not up there talking about deep life stuff per se. We're
Yeah.
talking about presenting different things and ideas and those kinds of things where you um, just your presentation solicits response.
Yeah.
And that response can be physical, can be mental,
Yeah.
or it can be both. It could be oral, okay,
Yeah.
auditory. What's your thoughts on that, Jenny?
You get to be connected with yourself and your own experience and vibrate with that and be authentic and be yourself. And people will feel it. They will. My story is 10 years of narcissistic abuse. So I always have a moment in the beginning of my share when the spotlight is turned on me and I am sharing my title, my work, my experience. When I am put on the stage in that way to share myself and be seen, I always have a moment of anxiety. I always have a moment of feeling fearful. And I have come to know that that is beautiful, that people get to see all sides of me, just like now. People get to see all sides to me,
Sure.
and it makes for such vulnerability and connection. And I feel it. Like I know when I'm in that beginning of my speaking, Like, I'm so fearful in this moment, and that's okay. And I feel people connecting with me in that very presence. And the way I learn to trust the process and invite people into that moment and connect with them, and then go on and share this divine wisdom that has come through this experience, and what I get to teach and what I get to, let them in on, makes for the most incredible experience. And just the response that I receive afterwards is so reassuring and so comforting. It's not about perfect. It is so about the connection and the service to the people we get to meet.
Very good point. Very good point. Also, your ability to connect with an audience is when you use a vernacular that they can relate to. You're speaking their speak. Okay.
Yeah.
You're speaking their language. And all of us here, I have noticed over the time that I've known all of you and placed you in such high respect, is we all have the voice people like to listen to. And that's important as well. If you have a squeaky voice, consider doing something else other than doing presenting, because a squeaky voice is very distracting, and pretty soon everybody in the audience has their cell phones up, or they're checking who's next speaker or whatever. And that's nothing against you. That's just a realization that, number one, you're squeaky because you're very nervous. The average person just don't walk around like this all the time because they don't, right? So it's very important in your own manner to be present before you step up on the stage. And presence is a point where manifestation becomes action. When you release all that anxiety of things that could have happened to you before and the fear of what's going to happen, you're right there in the middle, and things just happen. They come naturally. And the more you speak, the more natural you are.
We can actually work in our sphere of control and help reduce that anxiety and even our voice. Because, like you say, when we are stressed, our voice will go really, really loud, and we will talk really, really fast, and we'll move fast, and we'll like put all our muscles in the tension that they have when we feel anxiety. And for anyone who is experiencing that, you can actually take control, and you can lower your voice, and you can talk slower, and you can walk slower. And that will actually release the emotions of control and excitement and just the pleasure of connection in your body, and your audience will feel it.
Excellent point. Then when we get past everything and the applause has happened, there's time for follow-up. And Linda and I had a great discussion about audience follow-up. And what's your thoughts now, Linda?
Oh, this has been great. Well, follow-up to me is not trying to push anything that I'm doing or selling onto others. In the follow-up, it's finding out, you're probably going to get some compliments in a follow-up or whatever. And, just being a good listener, as Jenny does such a great job teaching on. One of the things when it comes to even just networking is, instead of here's my card, here's my card, here's my card, it doesn't make you look, it makes you look desperate, actually. And you're completely out of control, because now you have no way of getting a hold of them, and you have to hope they get a hold of you. So, you're on a day you forget your own cards, that's a lucky day. So, asking someone for their card and asking them if they would, enjoy chatting further, or even excusing yourself because you want to get around the room to several people. You might say, I would love to continue this conversation. Is there any way we could follow up together? Do you have a card? And then when you do follow up with somebody, make sure you know when, like, what is the resolve of that conversation? Are you two wanting to talk again? And if so, get it on the calendar right then and there. That is so helpful because we're all really busy and everybody just sort of floats away again. So keep the synergy going when it comes to follow-up is a big peeve of mine. Keep
Yeah,
the
you know, and
synergy.
usually have a small poster or something like that with a QR code. They can walk up and shoot that QR code and have a confidential conversation with me on their time.
QR code to the link to your scheduler.
To my scheduler,
Yeah.
yeah, and on those occasions where I'm up there selling books as part of my presentation, I'll also have a QR code to my author page on Amazon.
Mhm.
So they don't have to walk around with more papers and all those kinds of things. Normally, I'll have a few copies of the book that I'm focused on in the back of the room for sale if they want to do that. But 9 times out of 10, that QR code, boom, they can do it whenever they want to. What a great round robin, Linda.
Yeah, and I love the idea of the QR codes with the books. And what we've found is, you can go to all the hassle of, buying books ahead of time, getting into the hotel. We've seen so many heard and seen so many disasters with that. And the shipment doesn't arrive in time. The shipment arrives, the hotel loses it. The hotel won't let shipments come in unless they come in 2 days just before and they send it back. And so that QR code is great. Also remember, like Terry says, he does his author page. And if that's the intention, that's great. If your intention is to sell a particular book, then remember that people get on decision fatigue. So your chances are less when you give out your author page if your intention is to sell one particular book. So bring the QR code for that. You can put QR codes up on the screen. You can put them on your the back of your business card. Some events have grab bags, they call them, or swag bags. And so you could actually do a little maybe postcard size thing to go into the grab bag, and then that would have the QR code. And also remember, again, decision fatigue, have one CTA. What is the call to action? What is that next step you want the audience to take? And of course, just in chatting with people afterwards, you'll see what landed well. They might not have shown it, on their faces or whatever, or their laughs, but somebody might have had something just really touch them deeply. And sometimes you can actually use that in your next talk. Sometimes you need permission, and sometimes it wouldn't identify anybody. So yeah, so keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, and when you get off stage, ladies and gentlemen, there's the star effect. You just stepped off stage, people want to talk to you. Oh my God, I got to talk to this guy. I got to talk to him right away. And normally, it's been in our experience, certainly, those people who want to be clients right away are not good clients. They're all hooked into this star effect thing. They love what you said. Everybody is coming from ego rather than really genuine want for more information. And that's just as important. So, like Linda said, I have QR code for an appointment with me on the back of my business card. If they're crazy about getting a business card, I'll give them one because I carry a few. But I just pick up the business card on the back of my name tag. Usually, I'll just flip it over and say, "Take a shot of that, and let's talk soon."
Mm.
And my target audience appreciates that because they're really not crazy about taking 5 pounds worth of paper home when they don't really need it. I'd like to get some final thoughts in the order that we kind of started and see where that goes. And my dear friend from Greece, Maria Papacosta, what are you thinking?
Okay, here's a crazy idea. It always works for me. Okay, we always treat keynotes as a solo sport. It's the speaker, he or she gives the presentation, and then the Q&A session. That's the standard format. But in my opinion, a great presentation, it's not a monologue. In fact, a great presentation, it's a dialogue. So the more you get people involved while you are on that stage under this spotlight, the greater impact you have at the end of the day. the greater inspiration you give, and the more value you bring to the table, because you actually touch upon the things that they want to listen to. So in my opinion, profiling, engagement, everything we talked about today, what I would advise any speaker to do is not to treat their presentation as a monologue, but rather as a dialogue.
Great points. Great points. Mike, what's your thoughts?
Well, I was going to say, when you're up speaking, you're having a conversation. It may not be an actual conversation, but there are ways you can engage people. Some people don't like speaking, but if you say, look, if I move to the right of stage, you're dead against this, or if I move to the left, and you get people to shout, which side of the stage you want to be on, it's just something to engage people. The other thing I wanted to mention was something that Jenny said that I really want to emphasize, and that is your vulnerability is very much part of being a performer, having this conversation, because people don't want to talk to us, smart ass. They don't want someone who thinks they've got an air of superior knowledge, that they are some higher divine right to speak. They want someone who's talking with them. It's a discussion. So it may not be an actual discussion, but that, when you present like that, and that means you've got to be vulnerable, you've got to be open. And people like vulnerable speakers. They like them. So, Jenny, when you're losing your way, they like that. They know you're human. They like the fact that, you're not a superhuman, because they don't want to listen to a superhuman. They want to listen to someone who's like them, who makes mistakes, who gets into situations where, I've lost my place. They like that. So these things are really important for this emotional engagement, because they want to feel that you are like them. You've just got something to say, which might shine a light on something in their lives. That's it.
Good one. Good one. Mr. John Chappelear, ladies and gentlemen.
My primary message has to do with the Daily Six, which has to do with my story and my gifts of devastation, which caused me to sort of begin this process of thinking about others rather than just me. So it's the process that I go through is a humbling and opening of my soul kind of story anyway. And I just did a story a couple of weeks ago, which had to do with punishment as a child, and had to do, growing up through that, and then growing up through my mother being an alcoholic and not being around ever. And so, and this was something I had never told on stage before. And it was very uncomfortable. And yet this was probably the most connected story I've told in a long time, because half the people were talking about, wow, I never really noticed that any of these issues, you always seem like you have it together. And then the other half of the people were asking me, how can they learn to do these things too? So it was very much an audience engagement because of the vulnerability. So in the workshop also, though, one of the things that I do, I can't do this in a keynote as much, but one of the things I do is I actually give people a 90-day project for them to work on. What are you going to work on over the next 90 days based on what we've done these last few days? And they write it out. I make them present it during the workshop. Each person has to get up and tell them everybody in the workshop what they're going to do over the next 90 days. And then I get their email address and I start emailing them every week about how's it going on that plan. And I come back a year later and they're still excited about the fact that the plan that they worked on has been so successful. And it's really nothing more than just saying, okay, you heard all this great stuff. It's like, why is there action in my Daily Six? It's because you heard a lot of great stuff, but you're not going to do anything unless I tell you to go do something, because most people just aren't going to self-fire themselves up. I mean, Mike walks around fired up all the time, but just like I do. But it's just, most people don't. Most people aren't, wandering around going, yeah. So it's a matter of including them and exciting them and connecting them. And when you can do that, then the audience reaction in most cases is exceptionally positive.
Thank you, John. That was delightful. Very good. Jenny, Some final thoughts.
Serotonin, baby. So much of what we're sharing is connecting with the audience. It's being genuinely curious, genuinely wanting to understand. And what's the intention behind that? It's that we actually care. So spending that time, if it's in meditation, if it's in, really conversation with the company or the people that you're going to meet, just the hours before, to be fully present and genuinely care. And people know when we're being genuine. It's actually going to increase levels of serotonin, which is the relationship hormone in our bodies that makes us calm, that makes us present, that activates the frontal lobe so that we can be in joy, so that we can be in interest, that we can share being proud of who we are and what we are creating together. And it comes from the heart. It comes from a deeper level of humanity. So I sum it up with those words.
I love that, Jenny, when you talk about serotonin, because it's, that satisfaction of it's enough, whereas dopamine gives us that hit of I want more. So that's such a huge distinguishing thing. And who's teaching on serotonin? So behavioral scientist Jenny Landgren is. I love that.
Delightful, delightful. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening in and watching here. We're all tagged in the comments. And if you want to reach out to any of us, just open the tag here and that'll take you directly to our profile page and let's have a conversation. This has been a great series. I have just been honored to be with these fine speakers and presenters. Who are also my friends, and I hold them all in high respect. And ladies and gentlemen, I just want to thank you for taking the time to listen to these different individual episodes over this series and your time today.